and welcome to Global Eye from the BBC World Service. In the next half hour, we'll bring you some of the best of our global investigative journalism and reportage. I'm Nomsa Masego, the BBC's Southern Africa correspondent, and I'm based here in South Africa, which recently hosted leaders from around the world for the G20 summit. Here in Johannesburg, South Africa's economic heartland, the government has been giving the city a makeover, filling in potholes, fixing traffic lights, and painting buildings in preparation for the summit. Yet, beneath the fresh coat of paint, the gathering has become a lightning rod for anger, exposing deep-seated social dysfunction, racial divisions, and economic deprivation that many residents feel have been ignored for far too long. Later in the program, BBC Eye investigates the reality just a few miles from the G20 venue, where people live in derelict buildings, often hijacked by criminal gangs and in conditions unfit for human habitation.
There's gangs, there's drugs, there's prostitutes, there's everything.
And President Trump refused to attend the G20 due to the widely discredited claim Afrikaners are the victims of white genocide. Are South Africa's white minority really victims of large-scale killings and land grabs?
I mean, you see a lot of things that in the last few years that's been brutal, murdered and tortured and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't want that to happen with us.
Here in South Africa's biggest and richest city, there's always been a stark contrast between the haves and the have-nots. Shimmering skyscrapers have long stood alongside festering slums. And of course, the apartheid regime added a brutal racial dimension to the economic divides. South Africa hadn't hosted an international event on the scale of the G20 since the 2010 FIFA World Cup. Officials here hoped that the summit would allow the country to champion issues vital to developing nations, making borrowing cheaper for countries that pay 2 to 4 times more in interest than richer nations, and persuading leaders to scale up spending on climate disaster resilience. But despite attempts to downplay it, the meeting was dominated by Donald Trump's very public decision not to attend. The contrast between global diplomacy and local reality is stark in Johannesburg itself. Its central business district, once a symbol of wealth and power, during the apartheid era fell into decline after big businesses moved out. Over time, gangs moved in. BBC Eye has gained unprecedented access to these buildings to uncover a story of organized crime, political corruption, and squalid living conditions that shame this city. Here's Ayanda Charlie's report.
Johannesburg's inner city stands on the brink of collapse. Once a symbol of ambition, it has become a wasteland of neglect. In an area of only 7 square miles, there were hundreds of derelict or abandoned buildings. A vast number of these buildings are infested with crime.
Hijack this building.
The main business about the building is cooking the drugs.
They rob people and they go through.
They hide here.
They hide here.
And are unfit for human habitation. Can the city of Johannesburg be saved? Or is it an impossible dream?
Ever since I've lived in Joburg, a lot of what I would hear is that, be careful when you're in the inner city, Watch your back, keep your belongings close to yourself, because you might most likely get pickpocketed or mugged. There's a lot of criminal activity, drug use, lots of homelessness in the inner city. It's not a place you go mindlessly.
We are not going to be apologetic. Once we say building is hijacked, it means a crime has been committed.
Under South Africa's constitution, everyone has a right to adequate housing.
So basically today we disconnect hijacked buildings across Jeepies Town area.
But for as long as I can remember, the city has been spiraling out of control.
See what you found here, no?
The needles.
We're driving into Hillbrow, a no-go zone for most people. where the murder rate ranks in the top 1% in the world. We're headed to a notorious city-owned abandoned building called Varencourt.
All right, I lead the way. You go behind me. Perfect.
Around 300 people live in Varencourt.
Who's leading me? The people are running away from me immediately.
How are you, ma'am?
Good, thank you. Hi, I'm Panujani.
One young man has
Yes,
agreed
look
to
at
show
that.
me around.
Take me from floor to floor and show me around. Yeah. No water.
No water, no electricity.
So Nizaranja.
We use gases and solar lights. This one was the dining room,
Okay.
a bedroom,
Bedroom,
a sitting room.
lounge. Okay.
I'm taken to an apartment on the ground floor.
So this is your room. Oh, this is your kitchen area.
Yeah, it's my kitchen.
Is the municipality saying anything about? Oh, so why don't you have water? What have they said? Let me ask you that.
The municipality was angry
Okay.
about the crime.
Okay.
The municipality was angry with us. That's why they take water, because of that. We are staying in a tough life.
As this building is owned by the city, under normal circumstances, it would receive income from tenants' rent.
So you pay how much?
Me, I don't pay. They pay 300 rands otherwise.
Oh. How does that work? How come you don't have to pay? So you charge people to live in this unit?
No, there's another guy who collect that money. Me, I don't.
Another guy collects the money?
Hijack this building.
Yes. That's what I'm trying to understand.
Hijacked buildings like this one are a common phenomenon in which occupants take control of a building and collect rent for themselves.
Let me show you. There's no tap room.
So this is the toilet.
When I'm done bathing, I use my buckets of water and pour it inside.
But there's no plumbing system. Or does it work? Maybe let me not assume.
Yeah, it works.
So everything flushes down properly?
Yeah. They're in the basement.
When you flush it, it goes through to the basement.
The basement, once a car park, is down these stairs, but no one wants to take me.
So this is the basement.
Human waste is literally filling the basement up.
So that's the smell.
I will use the smell.
Overflowing into the adjacent alleyway.
The sewage situation is worse than I thought, but I've driven past those parts of the city so many times and you can smell it. But these are permanent broken sewage systems and pipes, and people live there permanently. So the only time you get attention from the city council is when it's election time.
Let's put it that way.
Nelson Ketani lives just a mile away in a building owned by the city called MBV1. This building is a rare example of temporary accommodation provided when the city did evict people from another building.
So this used to be like a laundry area.
It's a laundry area.
Wow.
So this is
Human waste. So what happened here to the pipe?
It's a blockage.
So what do you do?
There's nothing that we can do. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
The shocking thing is, Nelson and his fellow residents were moved here way back in 2008 from a building called San Jose. He still pays rent to the city, but his so-called temporary accommodation has continued for 17 years.
If you were to compare this building to San Jose, would you say this is better or worse?
In San Jose, we were in full control of everything. Here, it's not like that. There's guns, there's drugs, there's prostitutes, there's everything. People sell their rooms, people hijack their rooms.
Residents like Nelson feel abandoned and are left to rue the city's broken promises.
When you ask the city where the permanent accommodation you were supposed to be moved into is, what do they say?
They said, no, there's no place to go and put us into. City has no money.
City has no money.
There's no money. And nobody cares.
According to a recent report, more than 3/4 of so-called bad buildings have no water, sanitation, refuse removal, or electricity. But how did we get here? Johannesburg, the city of gold, has always been known as the financial and industrial center of South Africa. But by the 1990s, the inner city was in steady decline, barely sustaining the white minority it had once been designed for. When apartheid fell, Johannesburg became legally open to all races. A huge population influx, combined with underinvestment and the departure of wealthy landlords, placed immense pressure on the inner city. Buildings fell into disrepair and became havens for illegal activity. When I started making this film, I thought it was about abandoned buildings, but I now see it's about abandoned people. And I've come to realize that when the state becomes neglectful, that's when criminals can prosper. We're on our way right now to meet a man who says that he used to be a building hijacker. Now, this is the first time he's ever told his story, and he's agreed to speak with us on condition that we hide his identity. So how did you get into the building hijacking business?
I was transporting Dach to Germiston, Chippies Town. And this guy started to like me, understand? Then he chose me and he told me, buddy, I'm giving you a simple job to clean this building. And then put posters and write flat to rent. So people were paying rent, yes, for that period, but it's not the main business. The main business about the building is cooking the drugs. They cook the nyau beneath many buildings, plenty of them here in Joburg. They've been hijacked like that.
When you were in that building, was there ever any notice of eviction?
Yeah, the cars came, but it never
led to anything?
How it goes, you must first having a good relationship with the council. Having a good relationship with city council and police is a matter of cash. And the first package is a very important package for them. If you give them first package enough money, then you are done.
And then what happened? If they're not willing?
If you don't take the cash as a police, they will send us to your house.
And you would have to go and intimidate them, scare them?
Not just intimidate.
What else?
The police or your whatever, a councillor or whatever, he must die.
You were involved in the drug trade. You were involved in hijacking buildings. You did cause misery to a lot of people. So how do you feel about that?
It's a pain to me because some of the time I'm sleeping, I can see people. I see people. People died in these buildings. People went missing. I'm sorry for the wrong path in my life.
After the interview, this ex-hijacker told me he left the gang because he discovered they were plotting to kill him. He also shared his relief at leaving a criminal life and moving out of the city. The city council spokesman, Ntatisi Mudingwane, has agreed to meet me at the Moth building to discuss some of these claims. The council did manage to clear this city-owned building in December 2024, evacuating the occupants on safety grounds. But it's the only evacuation they've completed in the last 10 months.
So far in our investigation, we've heard claims from people that there are very concerning criminal activity, high-level criminal activity there, like the drug trade, in some of these hijacked buildings. What is the city doing to crack down on those criminal forces?
Yes, in some of the buildings, some of the things that we see there are scary, to say the least. But we will intensify our operations and make sure that we clean the city. There has been operations where we found people with drugs. We have found people with illegal weapons. And those cases are currently sitting with the South African Police Services for further investigation.
We've also heard claims that certain parts of the government and the police, in fact, are being bribed and are somehow colluding with criminals and building hijackers in the city to stall the justice system, essentially. What do you know about that?
In our investigation thus far, we have not had any physical reports or credible reports that seems to suggest that there might be any wrongdoing.
Under South Africa's constitution, in theory, everyone has the right to adequate housing. But the city needs to do far more to turn that into a reality. We contacted the Johannesburg police and asked them if they were aware of any bribes, intimidatory tactics, or even murders by criminals to prevent officers from carrying out their duties. They did not reply. We also asked the city council about cutting off the water supply at Vanincourt. They did not respond.
Apartheid, the almost 50 years of institutionalized racial segregation, has left a deep and bitter legacy across this nation. Under that political system, marriages were banned across racial lines. Many skilled and semi-skilled jobs were reserved for white people, and black people were forced to live in what were called townships and homelands. The shift from minority rule to democracy in 1994 left many white South Africans struggling to adjust. Some claim they're now being driven out by violent crime, economic decline, and the looming threat of land expropriation. Among some right-wing groups, this narrative has been adopted as proof of a white genocide, an assertion that has repeatedly been debunked by the facts and statistics and rejected by South Africa's government and senior Afrikaner officials. Since he returned to the White House, the narrative has also been promoted by President Trump. Has closed America's door to almost all refugees, he opened it for one group in particular, white South Africans. For BBC, Claire Mawisa has been following a group of white South Africans caught in the storm of ideology, fear, and migration politics as she asks what truth, if any, lies behind the rhetoric.
It's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about, but it's a terrible thing that's taking place, and farmers are being killed. They happen to be white, but whether they're white or black makes no difference to me. I'm about to sign some very important executive orders of our new administration.
In February 2025, Donald Trump signed an executive order offering white Afrikaners refugee status in America. He claimed Afrikaner land was being taken by the South African government without compensation. A month later, the US cut most foreign aid to South Africa. I've come to the town of Brits, just an hour's drive from Pretoria. I want to meet some of the people who are hoping to leave South Africa to try and understand what is pushing them to leave.
Hi, Colleen. Hi, nice to meet you. Claire. Very well, thank you. Hello, hello. And you must be?
James.
Nice to meet you, James. My name is Claire. Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Colleen is applying for refugee status to the United States for herself and her 3 youngest children. Colleen and her family came to Brits after the farm they were living on was broken into and robbed. Fortunately, they weren't at home. Now 17, Stefan has almost finished school.
I want to go work in America.
To do
go
what?
farming. I want to go in farming because I love farming. It's a passion of mine. It's small.
Why didn't you want to become a farmer in South Africa?
It's dangerous yet to become a farmer, and it's just it's not worth it to become a farmer here and risk it to get maybe attacked.
Colleen has been unemployed for 10 years. She scrapes a living selling clothes online.
The situation with our crime, every morning when they go to school, I worry, is something happening? Are they going to be okay? We don't know tonight. Someone can break in tonight.
I'm on my way to a farm in Free State Province. I'm meeting farm manager Martinez.
I mean, you see a lot of things that in the last few years that's been brutal, murdered and tortured and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't want that to happen with us.
Martinez is speaking from bitter experience. Both his wife's grandfather and his own grandfather were murdered in farm attacks.
They came into my grandpa's bedroom. He had a shotgun next to his bed. And then when he grabbed that shotgun and he wants to aim him, the guys took that shotgun. Because I think he was 70 years old or something like that.
In February, Martinez applied to become a refugee in the United States. He and his family have been interviewed by the State Department and are now awaiting the verdict.
Does the thought of leaving South Africa, does that break your heart? Does that make you sad?
Yes, that makes me really sad. I mean, I've been born and raised here, you know. But I'm prepared to do that, to get a better life for my wife and children. Because I don't want to be slaughtered and be hanged in a pole or whatsoever, you know. No, I don't want that.
No nation state or international court and none of South Africa's political parties, including those representing Afrikaners, claim there is a genocide in South Africa. But it seems that murders on farms are fueling a conspiracy theory. I want to find out how prevalent they really are.
Are white farmers more at risk of facing violence or crime on their farms than black farmers?
I will not say it's only the white farmers. There's also black farmers and black workers and foremen and people residing on farms get targeted.
Over 30 years after apartheid, 72% of privately owned farmland is still white-owned. Despite the land reform laws, no white properties have been forcibly seized by the government. Black or white, many of the farmers in this area have experienced a violent robbery. I'm on my way to meet Catherine. She has a farm and a polo school. Originally from England, she came to South Africa 25 years ago and fell in love with the place.
Hello.
She's lived here ever since.
Are you Claire? Yes, Catherine. How do you do? Nice to meet you.
One night in 2021, men came uninvited onto her property.
Well, I thought I was going to die that evening. But, you know, they'd actually come to steal. That's why they were here, to steal.
Do you think it's accurate to say that white Afrikaners or white farm owners are being intentionally attacked because they are white Afrikaners?
The reason why farm attacks happen is essentially because of theft. Most of the farms are owned by whites, so inevitably it's whites that suffer from those attacks. But there are plenty of rich black farmers who also suffer attacks. This story about a white genocide is absolutely absurd.
The story that is out there is that there's a white genocide happening in South Africa. That's the story that's out there. It's an inaccurate story. There are shootings every week in a township. There are assaults every week in the township. People have lost count. Communities don't report things to the police. It's just like they're numb to the crime that's happening in their own environment. Is there crime happening on farms in South Africa? Absolutely. Have Afrikaners experienced that violent crime on their properties? Absolutely. Nobody's denying that. But wow, on a whole other scale, crime is happening in townships where mostly black people are living.
The divisions created by apartheid continue to run deep in South African society. And nowhere is that more clear than within families.
Hello, hello. How are you?
While Colleen is determined to seek asylum in America, her daughter, Vilma, wants to stay.
Your mother has expressed interest and she's in the process of wanting to go to America. What are your thoughts and feelings about that decision?
I'm happy for them and I hope it works and I hope they can do it and they can start a new life. And get out of this country because it doesn't look hopeful.
President Trump has said that there's a white genocide going on in South Africa and he wants to help the Afrikaners escape South Africa. What are your thoughts and opinions?
They can call it a white genocide because most white people own farmland, but there's so much crime in South Africa. If you're black, if you're white, doesn't matter.
So it's affecting everyone equally?
Everyone equally.
In October, the US set a refugee cap of just 7,500, reserving most spots for Afrikaners.
Okay.
Colleen submitted her application and has been advised to complete more paperwork. Martinez and his family have now been granted refugee status and are preparing to move to the United States.
Now, here's some other great content from the BBC World Service that you can find this week. We've launched a brand new podcast, Asia Pacific, hosted from Singapore, in twice-weekly episodes that will also appear in Vision on the World Service YouTube channel.
I've been based in the BBC's Singapore Bureau for 20 years, covering stories all over Asia. The 2011 Japan earthquake, the pro-democracy protests in Hong Kong, and the Tokyo Olympics. And during this time, Asia has become an economic powerhouse in a region increasingly shaping the world on everything from tech trends to clean energy. Since Singapore achieved its independence in 1965 from Malaysia, it has had one of the highest economic growths in the world, helped by its strategic location and time zone advantage for the Eastern and Western world. Singapore is one of the world's most densely populated countries, and it has 4 official languages. It's a melting pot of culture. It's the perfect base for our new Asia-Pacific podcast, where we have in-depth discussions on the region's big news issues, as well as the unexpected trends shaping Asia. Asia-Pacific, unpacked by those who know it best.
Thanks for joining me in South Africa. We want your feedback on Global Eye. Let us know what you think on social media using the hashtag BBC Global Eye. Global Eye will be back from the BBC's headquarters in London next week. Goodbye.